Exercise 8 is going to cover the fundamentals of laying out advertisements within a newspaper's page. Before we begin, make sure you've got a copy of the Rules of Layout for Ads. This is the fourth handout that covers how you should lay out advertisements on your page. You can also download a copy of the exercise instructions. And for this exercise, download the Ads Page InDesign file. When you open this InDesign file, you'll notice that there are two pages already created for you. And I've got some information up in their header, and so below it is where we're going to put all of the different articles. Each of the articles that you can use for this layout can be found on the left and right hand side of the pasteboard. Now there is one slight issue with this. If you open up the paragraph styles, you'll see that none of the paragraph styles are loaded or a part of this document. So we need to load them up. To load some pre-existing paragraph styles, we need to have our British broadsheet already finished. So I'm going to click on the More Options tab at the top of the Paragraph Styles palette, then choose Load Paragraph Styles. Then let's go and find our British broadsheet. Here it is. When we say Open, it's going to ask us which styles do we want to load, and in our case we want to have all of them checked on. We'll say OK. And now you can see those styles are loaded into our paragraph styles so that we can use to start laying out our pages. The first thing we need to do is to select the articles that we want to use and have them fill up the front page using all of the rules and techniques of layout that we learned in our previous exercises. Once this page is full, we're going to jump them to the second page and also have them flow around all of the advertisements. But for now, let's focus on just putting the articles on the front page. If you look at the instructions, the front page should contain 3 to 5 articles. There's no particular order. You can pick whichever one you want to be the main story. But one of the stories does need to be the main story, and everything else can be lesser or subordinate around it. We need to keep our layout below that section header, so don't move anything above or on top of that. We will create jumps to the second page, and I want you to use a variety of headlines, add bylines for each of the articles, and then we're going to remove the widows and orphans, and we'll do that last. So for now, rather than watching me do the whole layout of this front page, I'm going to pause the video, lay out my document, and then resume again, and we'll pick up jumping everything to the second page and placing the advertisements below the articles. Okay, here we go. Okay, now that the hard part is over, I managed to lay out all 5 of the articles and get them to fit on the front page. Some things to point out are that I used a variety of different styles of headlines. So I've got banners, I've got a kicker, I've even got a slammer. There's one main article that's largest. It's got the largest photograph and the largest headline. I've got the other headlines and articles and photographs being smaller and having different sizes, usually getting slightly smaller as it goes down the page. And none of my articles are running into each other. They're not suffering from any kind of column gap or butting headlines. Once this is done, now let's focus on page 2. If we look at our exercise instructions, page 2 is where we're going to jump all of our articles, and we're also going to place the advertisements for our articles. Now I'm going to recommend laying out the ads first, then trying to wrap the articles around it. By doing this, you'll find it a little bit easier to figure out where everything could go. If you look on the instructions, we've got a variety of different sizes of ads. The main thing to keep in mind is that these sizes of ads are in columns by inches. They're not inches by inches. So this is a 1 column by 3 inches or a 2 column by 8 inches. So when you lay these out, keep that in mind when you place each of the articles or each of the ads within the column structure. The second thing I recommend doing is using the largest ads first and then placing the ads around it. And if you look at your instructions, remember we've got 2 different kinds of ad layouts. You can either have a U shape or a well shape, or we can go for a pyramid or a triangular kind of shape. What we don't want to do is to just place these at random all over the page. So let's get started on this part. Looking at this, I'm trying to find some of the larger ads. I've got a 4 column by 5 inch and a 2 column by 8 inch. Let's do the 2 by 8 first. Going over here, now these aren't going to be actual ads. We're just going to grab a regular rectangle, and this one's going to be 2 columns wide. So there's 2 columns. And looking up here at the top, let's make the height of it 8 inches. I'm going to fill this in with black, and that'll give me an idea, that'll give me an idea of my 2 by 8. Remember, that's 2 columns by 8 inches. We'll use my move tool. Let's move this one down. So I've got that one. The next largest one is a 4 column by 5 inch. I'll make a copy of my existing one. This time we want it to span over 4 columns. So there's 2, 4. And then going up to the height, let's change that to be 5 inches. Again, that will fit nicely down here at the bottom. We'll scoot these in, make sure they're staying in the column order. So there's those 2 down. The next largest one I think is this 2 column by 4 inch. So we'll make a copy of this 2 column one. Holding down my Option key. Changing the height of this one to be 4 inches tall. So notice a 2 by 4 is actually closer to being square. There's that one. And let's do the 1 by 3 and the 2 inch by 2 column by 2 inches. So let's do the 2 by 2s. So here's a 2 column by 2 inch, and there's going to be 2 of those. So there's one, and here's the other. And then there's going to be a 1 column by 3 inches. So let's do this one. 1 column wide, and the height of this one will be 3 inches tall. All right, now that I've got all of my ads, let's see if we can place them, trying to make them as modular as possible, but I can guarantee it's not going to work. So if I can't, how can we stack these in either a U shape or as a triangular shape, letting one side be taller than the other? Well, there's a variety of different layouts we can do. If I wanted to do a simple U shape, I could place this one down at the bottom. This one fits nicely in right here. I could then stack this one on top of here so it doesn't get too confused with my other small one. And then we'll let this one also wrap to this side. So this is a good example of what close to a pyramid and a little bit of a U. That's kind of sticking up right there. If I wanted to be more of a U shape, maybe I could swap a couple of these out. Let's maybe put this one down here at the bottom and then let this stick right here. The main reason why we use these different shapes is so that we can have our articles and text wrap easily and nicely around it. Another form that we could do is we could place this one down here and then have the other on top of that as well. I kind of like this layout, so I'm going to stick with this, and I think it'll read well for the kinds of layout that we're doing. So a couple of things to notice. We are using a U shape. The number of columns that we have is going to be very important when we start to dogleg or wrap our articles around it. So we need to pay attention to its layout. And I've got my larger ads towards the bottom and placing the smaller ones on top. Later on, if we see that there's a hole in the area, we can generate a house ad and fill in that whole area. If you look at the instructions, if you need to make a house ad, make sure it's no less than 5 column inches total. So it could be a 1 by 5 or a 2 columns by 2.5. All right, so let's jump our articles and see if we can get them to flow around here. I think this would also be a good time to pause the video, but just remember, we're going to create some jump text from the front page and then generate some jump titles at the bottom page or the second page and flow our text. So I'm going to pause the video and then resume in just a moment. Okay, so now that I've created some jumps from page 1 to page 2 and I've got my ads laid out, here's a couple of things that I've done to make it a little bit easy to figure out where to place things. I've put all of my jump articles in the pasteboard to give me an idea of how much room that they're going to take up. And in general, I can see that this brain surgery is the largest one, and the night article is the smallest area, with bombing in India about the same. I don't really know if it's going to take up the whole room, so as I start to lay it out, as with the advertisements, let's try to do some of the larger ones first, or to see if there's something that automatically fits. If I'm looking at my advertisements, I can see that I definitely want to stay away from dog-legging awkwardly around any of these ads. So here's an example of what I would want to try to avoid. If I took this bombing article and I placed it on top of this ad, the advertisement itself has text wrap turned on, and if I put it into two columns, you can see it flows nicely around that article in two columns. However, if I'd stretched this out over three columns, and I tried to do something like this, where it still fits inside the three columns, well, this area, that's kind of an awkward dog leg. It's not fitting the column structure that I have. So we would definitely want to keep this, if I did this, in three columns so that there's a nice gap in between there. So you don't want to have any awkward flow of your text going around an existing ad. What I would like to do, let's go ahead and set this back to one column. Now this article tends to take up about the same amount of space of two columns wide, so I think it's going to fit pretty well right here. Choose our move tool. Maybe I'll put this bombing one up top here at first. In looking at this, hey, I see there's a pretty good little bit of area right here, and that's almost the same size as one of these articles. I bet I could get away with either moving this one up. Let's move this one over to here. And now, maybe I can make the size of the word bombing a little bit larger to take up a little bit more room. That looks good. And let's make this 2 columns total. Okay, so far so good. Just got a little bit of an open space right here. Maybe we can find something that can contend with that. If anything, maybe I could take this square ad, place it over here, put that one on top. Yeah, that fits nicely. We'll put these two side by side, and then have this one perhaps wrapping around here. So now I've got a good stair pyramid step down this way, rather than having an awkward one placed up here. Or I could have this placed on top. Hey, that fits even better. All of this is simply a matter of playing around, and now I've got a smaller space that I could fill that area in with a house ad. Everything else here looks nice and modular, and so this was going to work out great to try to fit the rest of these into this area. So let's look at the brain surgery for next. I've got a couple of options for how I can lay this one out. If I was to place it off to the side here, maybe let's make the word bombing a little bit smaller. We'll let this body copy flow up a little more. Brain surgery could be placed here. We'll place this underneath this one. And instead of having it flowing straight down, one option I could do is to have the India one here. And look here, the night one fits quite well right there. So there's one option that I could do. The other one that I was actually trying to go for is maybe I could take the brain surgery one. And let's see if I can put it into maybe 3-column bastard measure. It's a little bit too close to the bombing one, so if I did it in 2 columns, it's a little bit wide. 4-column, definitely not going to work out. So if I did something like this, I would need to have or draw off a line to go down that one. To be honest, let's back it up. I kind of like this particular measure for my article. So I've got that, set that into 2 columns. Now I don't quite have enough room, so let's see if we can do something to give myself a few more spaces. Still got some overflow text is what I'm seeing. Go ahead and put the night article beside it. And the India article can go underneath here. And you can see I've got a little bit of extra room. So for this, I've got two particular problems. For the bombing one, well, this is wrapping nicely around that ad. So I'm going to keep that the same. Maybe we'll just create a simple house ad to put right there. For the brain surgery one, this is fitting nicely here. However, it's got some overset text because this ad is in the way. Or this one, I've got a little bit of room that I need to pick up. Let's see if maybe we can place this ad on top of here and get it to fit. Well, not enough room to move that up, so that's not going to work. So let's place the ad back here. It's giving me the least amount of trouble. The last thing I can do is to see if I can squish up a couple of lines so that I can buy a few more inches within this article. The easiest way to do that, I'm just going to select a lot of body copy. Let's pull in some of our tracking. So there's -10, -20. That bought me a line or two. Select a couple of more paragraphs. And just like getting rid of widows and orphans, all we're doing is pulling all of this in. Let's set the whole thing to be -20. See how far I can pull it up. Hey, there we go. Now that I set everything to -20, there's positive or -10. Let's see if I can push it back. There it is, set to 0. And there it is. That looks great. That looks perfect. Now that article is fitting nicely within this area. I do see we've got a little bit of a but and a gap, so I'm going to take this article. Let's squeeze it in. Actually, let's take the brain surgery article. Maybe all that work that I just did was for naught. Set it back to -20. I'm going to squeeze this article in just a point or two. No, not going to work. Let's put it back out. We'll go ahead and just add a line in between those two articles. So in this case, for the sake of time, it's working out, and I'm just going to add a line in between these two articles and not give it as much space as in between those. But we can definitely do that between these two articles. Actually, let's go ahead and take this night one, set it to be 2 columns. I'm going to make this one a little bit smaller and drag night over. Now we can actually take the brain surgery article and this one and just nudge it over. We'll do the same thing for India. So you can see how we're off by just a little bit, but in order to make it all fit, all I had to do was bring that over. Now let's see if we can put all of our text back into position. That -20. That's looking good there. The India article, we'll put that into 2 columns. For the India article, I need a little bit more extra space to let this work out. So maybe I'll pull down one line here, bring the word India down. And let's see if I can push several lines into here. So there's +10, +20. Let's go back up to the top of the India. If I can't do anything there, maybe there's something up here that I could do. Hey, one thing I could do is maybe make this picture a little bit larger. So I'll bring that down, push maybe a couple of lines from the picture. That's doing it. Give me 2 more lines. We can afford it. Wonderful. Now you can see it's really starting to line up down here at the bottom. I bet I can pull this one in to a -10. And we'll give it a little extra space down at the bottom to have that fit nicely. And there you have it. We've laid out the entire first and last page. Got the articles on the back page to wrap around nicely. We'll pull down this line to make sure everything spaces itself off. The advertisements are flowing around it. All I've got left is this little area. And this little area I can tell is going to take up less than 5 column inches. And the front page is working well with the back page. All of the articles are there. When you're finished with this, looking at the instructions. We're going to export this as a PDF using the smallest file size. So let's go up to File, down to PDF Presets, and you can choose smallest file size. You can put your name on front of it for Add Pages, save that PDF, and that PDF is what you're going to upload to Moodle once you're finished.